Hello everyone, this is Warmac9 bringing you kind of a mini mod spotlight, as it were. I was kind of playing through my single player series and I saw this this series of blocks. I've been picking up the ores for this and I've been like, well, what's ZyCraft? What can I do with ZyCraft? What kind of things does it really bring to the table for me? So I decided to do a little investigation and I decided to throw something together because I don't see a lot of legit, straight information on Zycraft. Direwolf20 touches on it within his own series and covers a lot of the basics, but it's not like an independent, dedicated video. So I figured I'd go ahead and try and give something like that a go. So, Zycraft, created by Soaryn. Soaryn, I believe, is actually in Direwolf20's FTB series, or his pack series on his multiplayer server. It can be found at Xycraft.wikispaces.com as the server, and it introduces some new ores and new blocks available into the world, as well as some dyes. First, let's cover the blocks. These are going to be your basic ores. Everything from red, blue, green, black, and white Zychorium ore. If you notice the pattern here, they kind of form little arrows, so the reds will always point down, blue's always right, green's always up, black's right, white's left. These are also geographically oriented, so that way is north, so they continue to point in the appropriate alignments: down, right, up, right, left. If you were to mine any of these blocks, you get a Zychorium piece, like a green Zychorium, blue Zychorium, so on. Those will form into these guys here, and then you can smelt those down to make these bars. The bars are not immediately useful as much as the raw Zychorium is, and you can always take the bar into your inventory and then just basically stick it in the crafting window and break it back down into the raw form without having to do anything else to it. But you do require these for some of the crafting of the blocks. So, starting out with my block wall here, we have the red Zychorium block, which is created by a grid of 3x3 red raw Zychorium. You can do that with any of these colors, and it will basically all end up looking like these guys. As you can see, like the dark Zychorium and the white light Zychorium both here look like these. And yes, they are animated. They have a very, very small swirling animation, which is really, really cool. They do not produce light, but they kind of look like they glow. So as you can see, all these guys look really, really bright. They almost look like they're glowing. They're not actually glowing. That's just how they look. So, going from these guys, we have our more advanced blocks here. Now these all have their own special properties, which I can get to here in a moment. For these, you will actually need the smelted version. So for the basic brick, you require stone bricks, which of course require 4 stone in an arrangement like so. And then the bars in the corners, it gives you these. This can be made for any of the colors, so it doesn't have to be green. It can be the blue, or it can be the red, it can be the dark or the light. Whatever you need to do. The next one we have here is the plates. This is the blue Zychorium plates. You can again use this with any of the colors. It has varying scales based on how many you're wanting to produce at a time. So clay bars, clay bricks give you 2, iron bars give you 4, obsidian 8, diamonds 16. I'll talk on why you would want to invest a diamond into something like this here in a moment. Next we have our platforms, which require 4 glass, 4 of the bars, any color of course, and an iron ingot, creating 4 Zychorium platforms, or yes, Zychorium. And then we have our light Zychorium shields. Well, you can do that with any particular color. Now this one requires 4 blocks of the plates, so you have to make at least 4 of these guys to be able to make 1 block with the shield, and then of course a cross of iron here. And then here is the big comparative wall between both the ores, the blocks, the bricks, the plates, the platforms, and the shields. Now let's turn this to night to get a little bit better a distinction between them. As you can see, they look really cool. They kind of have their own little glow at night, but they're not actually emitting light. But they do have a couple of unique features to them. So the basic bottom three down here have no real super special purpose aside from the prevention of mobs spawning on them. So if you have an entire room, a dark room, coated with these, mobs will not spawn in there. The plates are both TNT and creeper proof. The platforms here are possibly to be used as a light source in the future. They're not currently implemented as that yet. And then the shield is both all of TNT, creeper, and nuke proof. So you could basically set up a bunker with the shields and, yeah, be basically impervious to any sort of explosive damage. One thing that really reminds me of, that these guys really remind me of, is the old Windows 98s and 2000 and NT 3D wallpaper mazes. Yeah, you could put up the kind of psychedelic wall inside those mazes, and these kind of really remind me of that. I'd love to see somebody throw together something like this. I just didn't have the time or the patience to throw together a big, fancy pants wall or a maze of this stuff. Before I touch on to dye, I want to touch on to you can make structure blocks, which still have the animation in them. Now these guys don't quite have the same properties as these. They're not the proof, the explosive proof. They do still have the prevent mobs from spawning on them feature, and they're effectively just for decoration. I mean, these guys are basic decoration. These guys are literal decoration. These guys come in a variety of colors, and they can be made by using 4 stone bricks for raw Zychorium, and then a dye in the middle. Now I'm just using light blue dye here as an example to create a light blue structure, but the actual color of the Zychorium you use in the corners is completely irrelevant to the color of the structure you're trying to produce. So if I wanted to say use red Zychorium, it would still produce a light blue structure provided I leave that light blue dye in the middle. Same could be said if I wanted to use an orange dye. I'd be able to produce an orange structure instead of the light blue structure, even though I'm using blue Zychorium as the corners. So it's kind of, it's based off the color you're dyeing it, not necessarily the color of the crystals. Now over here we have the squeezer and the tank that's holding my liquid brown dye. Now with ZyCraft, you also gain something called aluminum, which I suppose in my amazing foresight I went ahead and put out here, didn't I? Now, aluminum looks like this, and then the block variation like this. When you mine these guys, they produce smaller versions of these. You can smelt those down into a furnace and create your aluminum nuggets. Now, the aluminum nuggets here can be used to create cans or create the aluminum block that you see right there. The cans are used in order to be able to contain dye, and that is their sole and exclusive purpose. Dye that you can produce from a squeezer, things with like coca, basically anything that produces a color pigment to apply to, say, like orange wool or indigo or something. I actually attempted using the indigo dye here with the squeezer. I didn't have much luck. I've had more luck with anything that was more of a raw material. So as you can see, you simply turn on these guys very, very creatively here, and you'll be able to produce the actual liquid brown dye, which will in turn get ported and put into my tank here. So these are basic dyes that work just like the regular pigment dyes. I'm going to reset it back to midnight. Work just like the regular pigment dyes, except for they're in a liquid format, so you can, I guess, keep track of them a little bit better. As far as I know right now, this is their chief and primary function, that you could say, hey, I've got a container of orange dye here, and I wanted to use it with some wool. Boom, I can dye my wool orange with these guys. Perhaps if you were doing some sort of mass production of colorful blocks, this might be a little bit more beneficial, but I'm not immediately seeing the value to it, but you know, some people definitely do some creative things with colored blocks, and more power to them in that regard. Next, I spoke on the fact that these blocks are in fact mob preventative. They will not allow mobs to spawn directly on them in the event that you have mob spawning turned on. I had it peaceful for the purposes of constructing. I put it back onto hard to try and get stuff to spawn. Now I'm going to come out here and see if I can get something to spawn out there. Saw some skeletons spawn back there in the jungle. And normally the spawn distance should be within distance right here. I almost kind of just don't want to wait for this because this could take literally forever. In essence, these guys, no matter the size of the platform, no matter the amount of them, no matter how dark it is, will not have anything spawn on them. So you're basically enemy proof, provided you can lay out a nice enough carpet of these things. They can still spawn on normal blocks, so say if I put some dirt out there in the middle of that pile, it would still be able to allow them to spawn on those, but not necessarily any of those blocks. See, I've got a creeper right there. I should have been able to see something if anything was going to spawn there, but I guess not. I'm going to set it back to dawn. I'm going to set it back to peaceful for the purposes of my next demonstration. I did say that the shield blocks were in fact nuke proof, and I unfortunately had a unwilling batch of volunteers here that just happened to be a little too close to where I decided to set up my demo grounds. So I ran out a little test here. We have some basic shields here, Zychorium shields, and then of course I have a big blast radius wall. And I figured would give this a go. Now I'm pretty certain that this will not block from the radiation poisoning and the hunger effect that nukes have if you're within radius. But it should still be a standing structure right here, as well as stuff that's basically on this end of it. Oh, feels like something just happened for us here. As you can see, I now have hunger and radiation, and there's the town gone. My God. Okay. There went my frame rate as well. Give me 1 second, guys. I'll be right back. Alright, and there we go. Jeez. I may have overdone it. A little bit. So yes, as you can see, these shield blocks are still standing, as is even this one block of leaves. Now, the leaves were behind the wall when the explosion went off, so the explosion basically affected everything except for what was shielded by this wall. And of course, me. Maybe if I was encased in the stuff, it might not affect me. I'm sure I didn't take any blast damage, even if I was in, say, like, survival mode. But I most certainly did take quite a bit of additional damage from the radiation and the hunger. So wow, this is actually quite the hole. I think I only laid out like 6 nukes here, and 5 or 6 nukes, and it blew out in all directions. And of course, you can see the Zychorium and the various other fancy pants ores here. I do see a small flickering effect with these if you get too far away, but they are usually pretty easily distinguishable and noticeable from a distance. As you can see, the aluminum over there naturally forming and glowing, the green over there kind of glowing. Once again, they do not actually produce a light source, they just kind of have that glow effect to them. And yeah, so that's going to be kind of the highlight reel for ZyCraft here. It's a really neat mod, especially if you're looking for something to decorate up your house with. It's pretty cool. I don't really feel the use of the dyes right now. They're not quite as useful as the blocks per se, but they are kind of neat, and I suppose they could be a little bit more convenient if you were wanting to store a massive amount of a dye and you're like, well, I don't want to have to sit here and hold all my lapis in my bank. I can just throw it into like a tank. They do work with Railcraft and Buildcraft tanks, so that is kind of a plus. Alright guys, well that is going to do it for me today. I always love the opportunity to blow up a little chunk of my test world here. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure you check out the link in the description to go check out ZyCraft at wikispaces.com. And again, this was made by Soaryn, and I've been Warmac9. I will see you next time.